Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Voices from the Mausoleum, and welcome to another episode of Five Influential Horror, where today is not a stranger. JR from Horror Fiend TV is here to talk his influential horror.
Hey, how you doing? How you doing, everybody? Yeah, this is gonna man. I had the bubble guts coming up with these five. I mean, one was obvious, but the other one, I'm like,
Yes.
damn. So
Yeah, there's one on here that I was really not, I guess not surprised, but I wouldn't have expected to be on your list. But yeah, the first one I knew was going to be on there. But yeah. So if you are not familiar, JR's from Horror Fiend TV. I've been on their channel. They've all of them except Joe have been on my channel, including Lexi, which is the newest, like she's the fourth corner. So but I'll put links to all of their socials and everything in the description for this episode so you can go check them out. I'm gonna get Joe's influential eventually, and then Joe and I are gonna do a series next year together that we haven't announced yet, but he's the only one that's never been on my channel before,
yeah, get the mayor.
which is weird. But yeah, so we're going to talk JR's list of his 5 influential horror movies and why I picked them. So the first one is the one I knew for sure was going to be on the list, which is Halloween.
Yes. Nah, we're not talking about the trilogy that that dude. I'm naming his name. That dude made. No, I mean, who can I? I mean, Halloween. It is. I think it's on. It has to be on everybody's list as far as influential horror. Because I actually look back at the episode that Ricky Grimes was on. And I see he named Halloween too, and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the same reasons that he named Halloween. I mean, I'm probably one of the biggest diehard Halloween fans, except
Mm-hmm.
for like I said, the trilogy and a couple of the sequels. But for
Yeah.
me, I mean, this put John Carpenter is such an amazing director, and what he did in this film, and like he created this the shape, which is
Mm-hmm.
I think was a perfect name for Michael Myers' character, the shape,
Yeah.
because for me it was like evil has no shape, evil comes in many forms, and it just
Right.
happened to come in looking like William Shatner, but
A bleached up William
a bleach
Shatner.
William Shatner. But I mean, what can you say about this film? I'm not gonna say like if you go back and watch it compared to certain horror now, it's not the greatest, but for what it did, it set a
Mm-hmm.
standard as far as creating. I mean, think about it, it created a killer that did not need to talk. Everything was based on movement. A patient killer. I mean, when he got to you, he
Mm-hmm.
got to you. I mean, I still understand to this day why people just didn't get in the car and leave Haddonfield. But for some reason, they decided that they have to stay there.
Yeah.
And what I think attracted me more to this film is like, yes, it was done on Halloween, but the opening sequence is a child committing murder. And that was something that you really didn't see in too many films. And then the fact that
Yeah.
you get this gap where, I mean, let's be honest, this is probably the greatest doctor in horror films. Dr. Loomis, played by
Loomis.
Donald
Yeah.
Pleasant.
Yeah.
Amazing doctor, and who can not
Mm-hmm.
love his lines? I mean, and the fact that I know there was the scene that where they were in the car driving to the hospital, he was actually really drinking. So he had a nice buzz going when he was doing that scene. But I mean, it was another film that introduced a sound score that goes along with the killer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is one of the epic sound scores, one of the epic music tones that starts kicking in, and shit's about to get you know fucked up because here
Yeah.
comes Michael, and you
Yeah.
know it created. Now the only thing that were for those who hate Rob Zombie's Halloween,
Mm-hmm.
I would say this: the gap that was filled in that film that was missing in this film
Oh,
worked well.
yeah.
And because you see, you didn't really understand why Michael did what he did, and
Yeah.
which is not for nothing. I like the vagueness of it,
Mm-hmm.
but the also vagueness it created was exactly was the motive behind Michael coming after his sister because it wasn't really explained. Which
Yeah, that's true.
I kind of like the vagueness, and we always talk about films that give too much and some films that give too little.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you did not understand why he was so hell bent on killing his sister
Yeah.
was a big mystery. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a great film. Obviously, once Michael Myers came out, Jason came out around the corner.
Yeah.
Very clear rip off. They actually admitted they ripped off Michael Myers.
Yep.
But Michael Myers is one of the four pillars of horror, along with Leatherface, Freddy Krueger, and Jason. But
The
yeah, I
originals.
mean,
Yeah.
how could you not? I mean, what, like when you first saw the Halloween, what did you thought?
Well, I saw it later. Like so when I grew up, I grew up on like cheesy horror. I didn't grow up on like effective horror. That was like something I, discovered way later in life. I was in like my 20s, I think, before I saw this for the first time. So it was kind of a different experience being older, but it was probably like one of the first, more like what we would consider like the classics that I saw. Like it was one of the first. And I watch it every year on Halloween as tradition. Like it's still just, I've never watched it and not been like, man, I really love this movie. Like I think it's crazy to think about what it was without the music and how the music was such a game changer, what they were able to do with such a small budget. I mean, because it's a weird sense of foreboding constantly because of that music. And it just did stuff a lot different. And then after you've seen it, when you watch a lot more stuff, you start to see this easy pattern of like, oh, well, this was obviously influenced, or people, who made this film were clearly big fans of Halloween because it was like a teaching moment for the industry where people realized that there was a lot more to be done with less, that you didn't need all of these things, to make an effective horror movie, that you just needed a cheap Halloween mask and a quiet person and some music, and you could make a hit.
Yeah, and the fact that it was supposed to originally be an anthology.
Yeah.
I mean, the minute Michael Myers came out, he knew he had something. They had to continue going. Now, I'm not going to say the other films were great. I know people go back and forth with Halloween 3, Ricky.
Nobody's going back and forth, okay?
Me and him do. But
I literally just watched that yesterday, and I put it on with intentions of watching it for a little bit, going to bed, and I was like, nah, I have to finish it. And I stayed up too late watching it. But
I got to go back and watch it,
It's so good. It's streaming right now. I think they all are.
Oh,
Do
yeah.
you think, like, this might be a stretch, but I'm just curious, like, you guys have done some filmmaking stuff and you're trying to get back into that because you enjoy doing it. Like, do you come at that as fans of John Carpenter? Like, do you feel like, you know what I'm saying? Like, do you come at it like, did the way that this film was made, did it impact you as wanting to do film or how you look at film?
It does, because I'm a big fan of, you don't have to see everything. And you don't. I mean,
yeah,
a lot of the kills he did were quick and brutal. And there was no need to repeat his stabbing or whatever. He got to the point where he had to do it. And the fact that when John Carpenter shot this, a lot of the shots are widescreen shots where you see the whole environment.
Yeah.
And that is one of my favorite things. I'm not a big fan where they center, like, I'd rather see the whole neighborhood.
Yeah.
To see half the side of the street.
There's something to that, I feel like, for viewers, though, to see that much empty space. It's not empty, but you know what I mean? Like, there's not anything that we need to be paying attention to, but we try to anyway. And that, I think, helps build tension and atmosphere.
No, it does, because you feel like you're there. You feel like you actually see everything. And not for nothing, when you see a view like that and Michael's around, the first thing you're looking at, all right, where am I going to run to? That's what I thought every time I said, all right, am I going to go this direction or this direction? Is he that fast? At the same time, is a lot of the film was like a lot of the silhouettes. Like, what's the classic scene where Jamie is crying in the hallway?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you see his face slowly come up. That is one of the greatest shots in film.
It's so well done. Yeah.
And things like that we look at and we like and we try to do. Like, I'm a big fan of like, if you have a scene where there's the killers around, don't make it obvious it's there. Put them in a position where you as a viewer are actually looking and you're like, oh shit, he's like right there.
Yeah.
And better reaction. Yeah, this film definitely influences a lot of stuff that I want to do as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
A lot of shots, of course, the score. If I find a perfect movie score,
for sure.
And a simplistic type of killer. Nothing that's Michael Myers is not over the top.
No.
Michael Myers is a guy in basically a mechanic suit with a mask on. That's it. And his favorite weapon is a knife, but he's not afraid to pick up whatever. I mean, he killed a girl with a phone cord, which is, I'm like, that was the most merciful killing in the whole film.
That's true.
Phone cord, and
That's
the fact
true.
that there's the other scene where I forgot the character, but when he grabs the boyfriend and basically impales him against the wall, he just another class scene just stands there
Just
and looks.
hangs there. Yeah.
Yes, because you're wondering what is going through the mind of Michael as he's sitting there watching this guy basically his last life. You
Yeah.
know,
Because
I
in
mean,
this one, you don't even hear like I don't know what kind of noises you would call them, like movement noises. Like you
yeah,
don't hear like grunts in this. You do hear them later in the franchise, but in this one, you don't hear any of that. There's never this like strain of effort. It's like so seamless. His motions, like it doesn't phase him. He doesn't have to catch his breath. He's not grunting when he's lifting up a body that weighs, 200, 175. Like, and that is so ominous, which is why to me, it's always been hinted there's just like a weird supernatural element
yeah,
to Michael Myers because he does not act human at all.
right.
Yeah.
And the fact is, this is the film, not including the trilogy, that you actually see his face momentarily.
Oh yeah, that's true too. Yeah. I
And
forget about
that's
that. You're right.
yeah, and that's something I was like, oh my god, look at Michael's face, and he quickly has to put the mask
Fix
on.
it.
But yeah, I mean, this film is definitely. I mean, if you don't have this on your top five, I don't know what the hell's wrong with you. You're not a
Probably my
horror
top
fan.
5.
Well, come on, but when you think of horror films, it immediately just pops up.
Yeah. It's a classic for sure. And its influence on the genre is like undeniable.
Yes.
Yeah. Totally agree. So your second one actually has not been in this series before, which is kind of surprising. So your second one is the found footage movie Grave Encounters.
Yes. Directed by the Vicious Brothers, and they only did 2 films.
There it goes. Was it this one in the sequel?
That's it. They didn't film anything else. These are the only 2 films they did. What I like about this film is this film came a little bit after the big 2, the Blair Witch Project
and then
Paranormal Activity.
Yep.
This one came at a time where there were so many ghost hunter shows on television. Too many ghost hunter shows on television.
So many, too many. Yeah. I mean, this is very clearly Ghost Adventures.
Yes.
Like he has the entire persona of Zach Bagans. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
And that's what people don't understand with this film. This film was supposed to be a spoof on Ghost Adventures.
Mm-hmm.
What the reason I like this film is because I do think this film started another subgenre of found footage where people go investigate.
Yeah.
Like haunted places that, and a lot of the films are almost the same. They go into places thinking they're not going to see anything or find anything, but lo and behold, they do. And what made this film funny was, I mean, there's one scene that always gets me is when he goes to the hospital. Now, this hospital where they filmed this is called Riverview Hospital. In reality, it's not a haunted place.
Yeah.
But that hospital was used for Saw, a couple episodes of X-Files. It's like one of the most used hospitals for filmmaking.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, and they had it on the Deadpool movie they did there. I don't know if did you watch Deadpool? No. The Deadpool 2. Mm-mm. The scene where where he goes to the children's hospital. It was done in the.
It was there.
It was there here.
Huh. I didn't know that. I didn't know it was used like that. That's cool.
Yeah, but also this film, just like the Blair Witch, just like Paranormal Activity, it had a very small budget.
Yeah.
And as a filmmaker, this is where I appreciate this film even more, because when you watch it, there's certain moments in this film you're like, all right, you could tell it's a low budget, but for the special effects they had in this, those scenes were great.
They were.
And you had comical things. I mean, when you watch a ghost hunter show, they always have a psychic medium.
Oh my God.
You always wonder if they're real, but in this one, they have one. The guy seems to be basically a phony, but there's certain points in the film where you actually wonder, all right, is he really psychic the whole time? Because certain things happen to him. He has certain feelings. The one scene I was going to talk about is when they arrive there.
Yeah,
he talks to the groundskeeper.
Oh my God, it was really scary.
Yeah, because you see the ghost. No, all right, cut. Here's $20. I mean, stuff like that. Because when you watch Ghost Adventures, let's be honest, it is so over the top.
It is.
I mean, Zach is so over the top, and Lance Preston.
Lance is, I'm telling you, like the first time I ever watched it, I watched it randomly. Like I ended up turning it on for my dad and I to watch because it looked interesting. And I don't know, I had never seen it. And I immediately was like, oh my God, they're totally making fun of Ghost Adventures. It's his little intro where he's like, what I forget exactly what he says when he's like talking about how he ended up being a ghost hunter, but it's like Zach's intro for Ghost Adventures.
It is. And they all walk out with the
In
little
all
statues.
black
Oh
with
my
their little
God.
emo facial expressions. Yeah, so funny.
No, I mean, for me, it is because Blair Witch Project, they put the folklore type of, go investigate legends and see what
Mhm,
you find.
mhm.
And Paranormal Activity was the home camera.
Yeah.
Something's in the house. Let's set up the house, see what we catch. This one is basically, all right, let's go to these location. And
Mhm.
if you haven't watched Ganjam Style, Ganjam is basically their version of Cave
100% it's
Encounters.
Graven. It's a slightly more updated one because it
Yes,
uses content creating.
yes,
But yeah, it's as soon as I started watching Ganjian for the very first time, I was like, oh my God, it's like Grave Encounters, which is not a complaint by
no,
any
it's
means, because
not.
it definitely does its own thing, but
Yes,
it's very obviously got to be influenced by Grave Encounters.
yeah, that's what for me is one of my top 10 horror films of all time because
So
of that.
great.
Because it don't go in, and this is like I've read so many people like critics hammer this film. Oh, it's not the greatest. Listen, this film is a mockumentary spoof. Go in it to have fun, enjoy it,
Mhm.
and the scenes where they actually show the residents of this hospital, they're freaky. I'm sorry when that thing starts coming through the window and stuff.
I
I
agree.
freaked out. I
Yeah.
mean, this film has a lot of very cool, scary moments, and yeah, definitely it's one of the influential found footage horror movies out there.
And you know that scene when the woman's in the bathroom and she turns around and her face goes all black and the face
Yes,
drops? I really think that's one of the first movies that did that effect. And now it's in so many movies.
yes.
Like that blacked out, like, and it was scary. The first time I watched it, it was scary. But now that I've seen that same effect done over and over, it's not as like, effective, but it's I'm pretty sure it was like one of the first to do that.
That scene is the scene where they go into like a closet to hide and they lock themselves, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden the girl gets scratches, and next thing you know, there's hands coming through the walls.
So
Another
good.
amazing scene. Yeah, for a low budget, I mean
They
that
did
was
a
very
they
good.
definitely used their money in the right places, I think.
Yes,
Because like, even when the psychic guy gets picked up by the book bag
that was very good.
and the hair moves and there's, like, these little things, like the bathtub scene with all the blood, that was
Yes,
really well done and really well shot.
the guy that goes through the window. I mean, I
Oh,
was looking
shit.
for that string because where the hell did how they pull that off?
How?
That
And
was
the
good.
guy that fell down the elevator thing, like,
Oh yes,
all of that just looks so good. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Great Encounters. I love that movie.
definitely.
Yeah. So, let's see. Your number 3 is The Thing.
Yeah, another John Carpenter. Listen, for me, John Carpenter is my number one director in horror. I mean, everything he does is. I mean, the thing, and the funny thing with the thing is, he didn't want to do this film at first. He actually rejected it a couple times
Yeah,
because,
I did know that, yeah.
yeah, he was a fan of the 1950s, The Thing, and that was his one movie that he loved so well that he didn't want to ruin
Mhm,
that movie. And then to top it off,
mhm,
Alien came out, which we'll talk about.
yeah.
And when that came out,
Yeah,
they were so afraid to put this movie out because the fact that that movie hit a home run, and they didn't know how they were going to compete against it. At the same time, when this came out in 1982,
mhm,
ET was around,
yeah.
and this movie was actually panned by a lot of critics. This movie was technically a box office bomb.
Yeah, I was gonna say it didn't really wow anybody
No,
back then.
no, it didn't. But you go
Yeah,
back to watch it. What makes it think such an influential horror film is it takes something where we always fear what's out in space, what's on other worlds in the universe. But
yeah,
when we find something, and that's they found something in Antarctica, they
mhm,
found the previous research crew that was there.
mhm.
They bring this thing back, which I still why bring it back? Why?
Well,
But
it's like the start of there's so many stories that start that
yes,
way.
and they bring this thing back, and it turns out being an alien. Now, the thing with the movie is we have to contain this thing. We can't let it get out because they'll destroy the world. And
Mhm.
how many films have you seen or heard that has the same concept?
Premise. Yeah.
So many of them. And then the
Yep.
fact they use practical effects that to
Oh,
this day still look good. And
yeah.
the prequel they made to this one used practical effects because they did not want to go the CGI route at all. So they used practical effects in that one too. But yeah, the practical effects, good storyline. I mean, Keith David's in it, Kurt Russell. I mean,
Yeah. Great cast.
great cast. Some of the greatest scenes with practical effects. I mean, that scene still freaks me out where the dude's head comes off the table, lands on the floor, the little
Spider legs.
legs. Oh my god, that scene still gets me. And the thing is with that scene is when it lands on the floor, it starts getting the legs start coming out, and then when it starts walking away, and they turn
Mhm.
around, their reaction, which would have been my reaction too, is like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean the scenes where it's taking over the dogs. I mean,
The dog was,
oh
yeah,
my
the dog was one
god,
of like the, oh my god, like the, because obviously it's like the first big moment, but it
yeah,
that one always sticks with me when it's got those like pieces like shooting out of the dog's fur. Like, oh my
yeah.
god, the, yeah, the effects in this are what I mean, even today, like these hold up so well.
I mean, even the scene where they're going around and collecting blood, and they have to
Oh,
burn the blood.
to look at the, yep.
I mean, even that scene where he puts the burns in, the thing just comes out. I mean, this film and people forget sci-fi is part of horror because it is a fairy tale
Yeah.
film. And sci-fi, I mean, this film is just. I know Ricky Grimes loves this film too. I know a lot of people that like this film.
Hmm.
It's just there's so much about this film that you could still sit down, watch it, enjoy it. I think I've watched this film like 10, 15 times.
I've seen it a bunch as well. Yeah.
And every time I see it, it's like I see something new that I didn't realize was there
Hmm.
before. But I mean, imagine that fear too, that you're Antarctica is one of the most isolated places in the whole world. And to be trapped there with this thing that basically can destroy all mankind, and your only hope is let's destroy it and hope nobody finds us and we die and stuff. But
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, John Carpenter's so great. I mean, two films here. I was gonna put a third one, but I was like, I can't keep doing all John Carpenter because I was gonna put a third one. But yeah, I mean, there's so many things about this film. I mean,
Hmm.
we could go on forever in this film. I mean, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it still stands the test of time.
It
Um,
does.
like great cast. Burt Lancaster's son, Bill Lancaster, was the one that wrote this film because John Carpenter said, "I'm not going to do this film unless you find the right writer," and this happened to be Burt Lancaster's son who, wrote this film. And this film's not a bomb. I think if this film still came out now, people still go watch it.
I
If they
agree.
did it, they did the retro thing. All right, we're going to put this film out. People are going to watch. It's gonna make whatever money it didn't make when it first came out in 1982.
Yeah, well, because now it has like a cult following. Like
Yes.
people, like I don't know. I've probably heard a couple people have the hot take that they didn't like this movie, but I mean, I think the majority of sci-fi horror fans, specifically, sci-fi and horror go hand in hand so well.
Yes.
Though, like they are to me, like some people are like, oh, comedy and horror. No, for me, the two, like as they're separate things that go the best together, it's sci-fi and horror. And the other thing that I think this movie does really well, and I mean this doesn't matter how many times you watch it, at least not for me, is the way that this shows like human nature, this
Yeah.
sense of like distrust, and like the way that it, like we get this taste of like all these people and they're really fun, like energetic, loving friendships and stuff that they have. They're all really close, they're stuck there working together, they know each other really well.
Yeah.
And then how quickly, when shit hits the fan, how quickly that changes and suddenly
Yeah.
you don't trust anybody. And I think it's like such a like a survivalist thing to be like, no, like I have to look out for me. It doesn't matter that you and I were just having drinks together, like you can't be trusted anymore because I don't know if you're it or not. Like there's just so many things that go, and I always feel the tension and the isolation when I watch this. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how many times I watch it, it always comes back with those same feelings that I did the very first time I watched it.
And that's the crazy part because when you watch it too, it's like you try to put yourself in their place and you're like,
Yeah.
there's nowhere you can go. You're completely
What do
isolated.
you do?
Yeah. So you literally have to stand there and fight for your survival. And then once it starts taking the other bodies and going together, I mean, this film is just practical effects. If you hate CGI, definitely watch this film and appreciate the practical effects it had because it's still good to this day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. That one's been on here a few times, but it's interesting, and I think I say this every time, but whenever it comes to movies that are on multiple lists, people always have different things to say, different things that they notice. So it's always like a different conversation, even if it's been on here before. So yeah, so your number 4 has also not been on here before. Go figure, the two found footage movies. Which is the found footage movie Wreck.
Yes, yes, yes. Now, imitation is flattery.
Oh no.
So
Mhm.
you know when a movie is so good that when they make a remake of it and the remake is as good as the original, that there's something special about the film.
Yeah, that's
Now,
not where I thought you were going with that. So that was
I
very
thought you
nice.
were, yeah, I was being nice because I know you like quarantine and I
Well,
know who likes
so and
quarantine.
I know I've talked about this before, but just for like, I'll just reiterate. I saw Quarantine when it came out in theaters. I had never seen or heard of Rec. So going from someone who's seen Quarantine like the weekend it came out, being really like loving it, enjoying it. It was such a great movie. It was scary. It was like very well done. Scott Doug Jones, like I was obsessed with it. So going into Rec, when I first watched it for the very first time, it was really difficult because it is step for step the same movie, except for a few things at the end. But
Yes.
the dialogue, it's similar, and so it's really hard to go into this film that I loved to the film that it was made from. That's the same movie. It's so difficult. But anyway,
Well, I'm a big international
yeah,
film fan. Everybody knows that. And
yeah,
this was the movie that really put me into the international market because
okay,
majority of the time we're watching international films in the early 2000s, it was the Asian horror, Korean horror. You know, we had the remake of The Grudge, you know, the remake
yeah,
of The Ring,
yep,
but we were so locked into like, wow, that's the only international, you know, area where they
that's all
have
there
great
is.
films. And all of a sudden, here comes the Spanish film in 2007. And once again, it does something different that none other of the, you know, like found footage movies did. It
Mhm.
started as a documentary that
Mhm.
wasn't meant to be a horror found footage. I mean, the
Yeah,
premise is you have Angela Vidal, who, you know, she's a TV host for her own show
yep,
where I think it's called While You Were Sleeping.
yep,
And all she plans on doing is following this firefighting crew in the station and seeing how their night goes. And then they get that phone call with a woman screaming in the apartment. They go there and all hell breaks loose. Now,
mhm.
where I would say this one is a little different than Quarantine as well is I feel like this one, some of the kill scenes and attacks were a little bit more brutal because
Yeah,
a lot of films, international films, they don't hold back. There's no
right.
lying,
That's true.
and this film was not afraid to push that, you know, push
Yeah,
it to a certain. I mean, think about the scene where the little girl, when the
yeah,
little girl attacks the mom. I mean, you're like, and she's holding her. I mean, not from that. I would have grabbed something and hit that kid with his head. I mean, I'm sorry. You know something's wrong with the kid.
yeah,
No. And the scene with
yeah.
the woman in the apartment. I mean, that
The one
was
that charges them.
charges him, grabs the guy by the neck. She just pulls that. I mean, this film has so much because you did not know where it was going. I mean, and I watched this before I watched Quarantine,
Yeah.
and it's like I didn't know where it was going to go. And the fact is,
Mhm.
once they're stuck in that building, and this is another thing where, you know, we talked about in the thing where the mistrust comes in. Who's sick? Who has this disease? What's going on? And I
Yeah.
like the constant tease of, well, the top floor suite. There's a guy that lives there, but nobody's seen him. And I kind of like that tease because when movies do that, eventually the movie's gonna end somewhere going to those floors.
Yeah, you're gonna get to yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And I think for me, like one of the oh shit scenes in this one for me was while they're standing there arguing that what the hell they're gonna do, you got the firefighter that drops off from the freaking gets thrown off from the stairwell all the way out to the bottom. I mean, the way he hit, that was so realistic. I'm like, oh my god. And then the bloods. I mean, this film did very, very well when it came to the gore aspect of the
Yeah.
film because it was bloody,
Yeah.
it was brutal. The transformations were awesome. And that's
Hmm.
another thing. A lot of the transformations that we're used to, watching American films are
Hmm.
so different from international films.
Yeah.
International films, they go overboard. I mean, to a certain point, a lot of the transformations are
Hmm.
so good, well done in international films that
Yeah.
once you watch the American version, you're like,
Yeah. The thing is like there's gore in Quarantine, but the camera moves off of it a lot.
yes.
Whereas in Wreck, I think it lingered longer. Did you know that the reactions of the people on set when the fireman fell were legitimate? They didn't tell them they were going to do that.
I would have been scared too.
So when they turn around and they're in shock and they scream and stuff, that's real reaction because they're just on set filming. They don't know that that's coming, and obviously that wasn't the case in Quarantine because by then it had already been done.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to like know things like that, and then you go watch it and you're like their reactions. I mean, they felt real anyway, but knowing they were is kind of fits. It's like sits different.
No, yeah, and the fact is, like, once all the transformations happen,
Mhm.
where you see these, like infected running up
Yeah,
the stairs and stuff like that, it's awesome. I mean, it is
the
awesome because
shrieking, the
oh
sounds
my
they
god,
make.
like, and you
Ooh,
sit there like, what would you do? And that's why I like about this is what I'm sure you'll agree. What's so good about found footage horror is it's meant to put you there. So you're
yeah.
imagining you're there. You're imagining you're the one holding the camera and you're
Hmm.
seeing this through your eyes. And this film did such a good thing because Angela Vidal was badass. I mean that she was. I mean,
Yeah,
she was so good in this film, and
she
that's
was.
another thing. She was very convincing.
Yeah.
And for found footage horror, sometimes the person who's the lead is not always the most convincing.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
And she did such a good job with this. And what I like about it is when they did the sequel to this, it
Mhm.
started off in the same place. They're still in the building.
Is the second one the one that's I haven't seen it? Is the second one the one that's just in a different perspective or something like that?
The second one is in the perspective of the rescue crew that's going in there to figure out what's going on.
Okay,
And
got it. I should
eventually,
watch it. I've only
it's
seen the first one.
the second one is good
Hmm.
um, because it shows the aspect of, like they're trying to rescue her. And the fact that, I won't spoil it for you. All right. So then there's the third one, which is actually really good too, because it shows how the infection is spreading.
Okay.
And which is
Which one's the one with the train?
the train is the fourth one because the fifth
Four.
one is where they're on the boat.
Okay.
Yeah, and the third one is the one where it's in a wedding, and the whole thing takes place of the view of somebody recording the wedding, which has some very cool kill
I'll have
scenes
to
and
check the
attack
rest of
scenes.
these out. I always see them streaming, like they pop up from time to time, obviously, especially the more found footage you
Yeah,
watch, then that's what you get recommended, right? So I see them come up all the time, but I've only seen the first one. I've never watched the rest of them.
yeah. I don't think she was in the third one, but she shows up in the other two. And
Okay.
the fifth one's actually pretty cool because they're stuck on like a Navy ship, and it's
That sounds
trying to
cool.
yeah. And those kill scenes in there are really good. And she's such a badass, and that's what I like about her is you have
Mhm.
this character who now is such a fixture for a franchise. And a lot of franchises, especially found footage, they really don't follow the same characters over and over again. Very rarely do they, like the VHS found footage ones, which I should have put on my list now that I think about it. But but
This is
it's
your list has just been like all found
yeah,
footage.
no. But yeah, I mean that's what I like about it. It's
Yeah.
it created a franchise with this. It's a very good franchise. Each film is
Yeah.
differs from the other. The difference I think that this one has with Quarantine is they kind of went the demonic route towards the end of it to explain certain things, and then
Yeah.
when you watch the second one, it kind of brings into focus a little bit more. But
Okay.
yeah, that
Yeah,
threw me
because
off a
this
little bit.
yeah, the ending for the first one is that it's demonic possession, not
Yeah,
zombies like what we think, like a virus,
and still
which is
has
really cool. That's very
yes.
unique. Yeah.
And when they show the woman who was the infected one, she was like, it
Yeah.
almost feels like when you see her, you're like, all right, so She also looks like how they would did Mama. She also looks like how they did certain other characters that have that barbarian, almost the same look as her. So just to show you the influence that that one character had, and have
Yeah.
one of the best endings in the film where she's reaching for the camera and gets pulled back.
Which they did really well in Quarantine as well, but
Yes.
they didn't go the demonic route in Quarantine. It just ends as like the person brought like a disease over from
Yeah.
somewhere else or something like that. It's a little more generic. It didn't, but I think I don't know that it really matters because once you've seen the demonic concept, it's not really original anymore,
Yeah.
and that's what made it work was because you were just like, wait, what? Like,
Yeah.
it's
When you
good.
watch the second one, it fleshes out the story a little bit more.
I'll have to check the rest of them out. Yeah, I just keep skipping over them.
No, you have to, especially if you're a found footage person.
Okay. Well,
Come on.
so the last one that you had is the one I was surprised by.
Really?
I mostly think because I just don't remember hearing you talk about this one that much. Although I say that it's already come up, but you know what I mean. So your fifth one is Alien.
Oh yes, Ridley Scott. See, there's a trend. There's a lot of very good directors. Yeah, this one I love a lot because it was one of the first films to go into deep space, and the fact what it created and the respect it had for certain things in order to create the xenomorphs.
Yeah.
I mean, the concept of the creatures, the concept of the inside the spaceship is based on H.R. Geiger's artwork, and if you haven't seen his artwork is so amazing and compelling.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that Ridley Scott used his artwork in order to create the xenomorphs. Now, you have the unknown in space. You have a team of basically they're on the Nostromo. They're awakened by a distress call, and once again, decisions. That's what makes horror great. Why go on the fucking planet? But they go on the planet, and they discover the ship. And when they go in the ship, Kane, played by John Hurt, is such a memorable character for the horror sci-fi genre.
Mm-hmm.
He gets his sting. Now, once again, if there's this egg in front of you, the last thing you want to do is look into it. I mean, I would have started taking steps back. And
Agreed.
I think, and then when that scene when it jumps out and breaks through his visor, that was amazing. Because
really well done. Yeah.
Because I still jump from time to time, and that I know it's coming, but then when it does, you're like, oh, come on, man. And think about that. The fact that you got this thing on your face that is literally impregnating you, and you're passed out not knowing what's happening to you.
Yeah, a lot of symbolism in the Alien movie.
Yes, and the greatest scene, one of the greatest scenes in all horror, he wakes up, they're eating dinner, think everything is fine, and a thing comes through his chest. Which, once again, one of those scenes you're like, we're just gonna stay in here and just watch that thing look at us. I mean, nobody reacted to it. there's a lot of things in this movie that just it drives you crazy, but because I would think, we all would do things differently. But yeah, I mean, Sigourney Weaver, this made her a foundation in sci-fi horror. I mean, her, with Jamie Lee Curtis are the two, for me, the original Final Women.
Yeah.
And they're both different. Ripley was always a tough ass. I mean, her character was just amazing. Even in the sequel, I freaking loved her. And I mean, once the thing turns into a full size xenomorph, I mean, this is once again things I like is a lot of the kill scenes in this film were kind of done kind of off camera a little bit. I mean, even when I forgot his name, where the guy he's looking for the cat, and all of a sudden it goes over him. You see a quick shot of the top of his head, and that's it. He disappears.
Yeah,
they bring him up, he's gone. The scene where he kills was the girl and the other guy at the end. Off screen, you hear the noises, and that's the thing I like too is you heard the screamings through the intercom, which was amazing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things in this movie that it did so well. And as far as sci-fi, this film started the whole sci-fi horror aspect of the genre. And now the sequels were always the greatest. Like the Aliens. Aliens for me is better than Alien, but because Alien introduced everything, you have to give it to homage respect because
I
it
feel
is.
like a lot of people feel that way. A lot of people really loved Aliens.
But you know what's the crazy part is when you actually watch the director's cut of both,
Hmm.
it just shows you how more amazing this franchise is.
Hmm.
Because in the director's cut of Alien, you see exactly what happens to everybody a little bit more. You see the whole thing of
Okay.
the cocooning of prepping them up for the queen, even
Hmm.
though we didn't, you didn't get to that point in the film. But yeah,
Right.
this film and I don't know about you, but every time I see that face hugger, that thing still freaks me the hell out. I mean, this
It's like a weird bug. Like
and it
it's,
always lunges at you.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I don't know what more you could say with this film because it's just it's such a great film, and it was one of the films that had a killer bot in Ian Holm playing the character Kane. I mean, who didn't love
Yeah.
Kane? It's such an a-hole. Even though in the sequel Bishop was a lot better because he was cool, and he
Yeah. I like
was
Bishop too. Yeah.
and it was Lance Henriksen who doesn't love that guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean this one, I'll be honest, I was looking at which film to fill my the top the five, but this one is one that I watch over and over again. I mean, this is like my Lord of the Rings because every time I get a chance, I watch Lord of the Rings or a Hobbit. But every time I see Alien, I have to watch Alien and Aliens and
I
Alien
gotcha.
3. I didn't like too well. I love Prometheus. The
I
Prometheus
also really
is
liked Prometheus.
uh was the Covenant was okay. Could have been better. Could have been more
It
fleshed
was all
out.
right. Yeah.
But I
There's one
hope
more after that, right?
um no, I thought it was Covenant. It was Prometheus, Covenant.
Is that the one with the girl that's like, I'm trying to remember.
That's where they go. She goes and they find the planet where the engineers are from. And oh my god, David's there. And he was the one that killed them all because he spread.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that was good.
Covenant was there. I thought there was one where this woman like goes up and she ends up finding like maybe it's not alien. Maybe I could have sworn it was though. I thought there was like one more, but anyway,
I think I know there's supposedly they're making a series for
series
this, which
that's supposed to take place on Earth, I think, right?
yeah, which I'm scared about because
Rightfully so, I think.
yeah, when you have a franchise like this, I mean, Aliens 3, I didn't like it because they killed off the character Newt too quick. You could
Hmm.
have built on the new character a lot.
Yeah.
Alien 4, same thing. I mean, wasn't a fan of it, but I'm kind of glad that really Scott decided, let me start doing a prequel to the
Yeah.
franchise and see how it goes. But Prometheus, amazing film.
I loved Prometheus. I thought it was really good. It's funny because like I went and saw Prometheus in theaters and it had been like I don't know, a long ass time since I had seen Alien. And so I was like, oh, I'll go home and watch it because I owned it. And I was like, I went home and watched it and I forgot how incredibly slow it is.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing happens in that movie for almost the first hour.
Yeah.
Like it takes forever, but once it starts, it really doesn't stop. And then there's like noticing that like the lights on the ship are Christmas lights,
Yeah.
stuff like that, from just, but yeah, I love Prometheus.
Well, that's why, like for me, Aliens is more action packed because the minute you have the idea of a Marines going into the planet. Now, like I said before, watch the uncut because the uncut shows that they found the ship from the original film, which was awesome. I like the fact
Okay. I
that they
think I've heard
intertwined
that
it.
before. Yeah.
Yeah, Newt's family, they go out and they find the ship, and the dad's the one that gets the thing put on his face that brings it back to the colony, and it starts the whole thing of affecting everybody.
All
But
over again. Yeah.
yeah, but it's a good franchise. I think even though it's such a great franchise, it's still somewhat forgotten a little bit that people don't talk about as much as they should when it comes to sci-fi horror, because sci-fi horror has been on the up. It's upticking. There's a lot of good movies out there now in the sci-fi horror genre. For me, I think the two genres are subgenres of horror are really on the upswing. Are found footage is still getting better because I don't care what anybody says. Out of all the subgenres of horror, found footage is the most creative, and it
Yep.
gives the filmmakers and directors the most freedom they could possibly have.
Yeah. Totally agree.
And then the sci-fi is starting to get up there. I mean, we did a film No One Will Save You.
That was
So
so fun. Yeah.
yeah, and you get more and more of those, which is more interesting. And that's what I like is it's a sci-fi. I mean, Prey. We did Prey.
Prey was so good.
Sci-fi horror, very amazing. But yeah, I mean, those are the two genres that I hope they continue, going, because I mean, found footage, I don't think you're ever going to get rid of found footage. It's just going to continually get better and better. I hope.
Yeah. Fingers crossed.
Especially for us, because we love that genre so much.
I know. I've seen enough bad ones to last me 3 lifetimes.
God,
so
yes.
I'd like to see some new ones or some good ones. Okay, cool. Well, Halloween, Grave Encounters, The Thing, Wreck, and Alien. That was your list for influential.
Yes, watch them all. Curious to see what people think about those 5 films.
Yeah, especially if they've never seen them before. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, definitely you should watch them, man. I mean, you should always watch these films, and not because we're saying it, but because these films, they deserve to be watched. They deserve to get that respect, because we all have different films that we consider influential, and the reason we like them so much is because we think they did something to continue to build a foundation for horror. So yes, definitely should watch this.
Yeah.
Horror is the best genre.
Agreed.
Not comedy. Rom-coms.
Well, thanks for making time to do this.
No, thank you.
We've been talking about it for like over a year.
Yeah, no. But we did it. We did it.
We did it. And once again, Horror Fiend TV's links are going to be in the description, so you can go follow them, sub to their channel, follow them on socials, all that good stuff. Yeah, so I think that's going to wrap up this episode of Influential Horror. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. Enjoy the rest of your week. Have a good weekend, and we will see you in the next one.
Yes. Joe's coming.
Joe's coming.